Because at the point that you can have a slight awakening to that thing that's been in your path that's been blocking you, oftentimes that can lead to an acceleration of understanding and an acceleration of awakening that goes well beyond just the next one step. You're like, okay, I've got that small thing out of my way, and then ba-boom, 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 dominoes start falling one after the other, after the other, after the other. Oh, I get this now. Oh, I get this spiritual master's writings now. Oh, I get that concept now. Oh, epiphany. And I just wanted to share that with you, that it's awesome that you guys can take benefit from these little podcasts that we put out. And I very much appreciate that. Hey guys, how you doing? Hope things are well for you today. We have an email and a slight awakening from one of our podcast listeners that we're going to go through. Then we're going to talk about the scientific, peer-reviewed, published science on mindfulness, meditation, and emotional intelligence. And then at the very end, we're going to go through some awesome science and experiments that businesses have done with mindfulness and emotional intelligence to their huge benefit. So stand by. Go. Hey, welcome to the I Am Podcast, where we answer all the questions about spirituality and inner peace that you ever wanted to ask. I'm your host, Sean Webb. Okay, so we're going to jump right into it today. I got an email just yesterday from a person who is just starting the Body, Mind, Spirit 101 series and just got to the episode number 4, the equation of emotion. Now, the equation of emotion is, of course, expectation or preference as compared to reality as perceived, or our perception, and when those things balance, you have a positive emotion. When they're imbalanced, you have a negative emotion. When one or the other doesn't exist, you don't have any emotion regarding whatever it is. And so Paul had a very good question that he wanted to ask me because he was thinking about the equation of emotion, and he started out, regarding the equation of emotion podcast, sometimes I find I generate negative emotions purely from expectation. I perceive a bad outcome in an event and feel anxious. Now, the perceived reality mostly never materializes, but in this instance, the equation of emotion is incomplete, i.e. there's no corresponding reality, yet the emotion persists. Can you explain this? And so, Paul was missing the fact that his perception was creating what he called an expectation. He created a perception that wasn't real, that was so certain he labeled it an expectation. But in reality, what it was a perception, his idea of something bad that was going to happen that never wound up happening. He was tying the reality into that too much. And so I tried to explain that our perceptions aren't necessarily connected to reality whatsoever. Our perceptions are simply ideas in the mind. And so the expectation that we're talking about in the equation of emotion is the expectation that is associated with our attachments, that's connected with homeostasis, because homeostasis is that thing in our body which all cells run by. And basically it states, if everything's cool, we can do our normal operation. If everything's not cool, then we have to take action. And the same is true for our emotions in our mind. When the brain, which is the organ that is designed to defend ourselves, we have a bear that comes out of the woods in front of us, and we feel fear because there is a potential for us to not continue. And so that fear reaction is that program within our brain to help get us into that fight or flight reaction of getting the hell out of there or fighting the bear off or whatever it is that we need to do to survive another day. Okay, so when we have cognitive attachments that get attached to our sense of self, that adds to the number of things that we need to defend, or the number of things that we need to have be homeostatic, or basically be held in the status quo value or increased. Because at the point that something's being decreased, a portion of our sense of self is being decreased, that's when our emotions go nuts. And so Paul's mistake, wasn't really a mistake, just needed a little clarification, was that his perception of something being so likely that it was going to be an expectation, he put that perception in the expectation spot, rather than allowing the expectation spot to be filled with how our mind simply processes things that we're connected with. So here's my response to him in email. Paul, it's not the reality itself, but your perception that completes the equation. Your perception of a potential reality is what completes the equation of emotion. Reality and what occurs does not necessarily have any connection to our perception of occurrences. And in fact, we can have perceptions about things that never actually happen, such as the potential for bad things that happen in the future that do not meet our expectation and or preferences. So if you think a loved one has had a car accident, it will cause you turmoil until you learn that that's not the case. And reality is not connected with emotions in the least bit because of this phenomenon. To clarify, your expectation of something bad that may happen in your life isn't an expectation in the equation of emotion sense. It's a perception of a level of certainty that something is going to happen that seems so certain that you call it an expectation. But in reality, EPs are set unconsciously via the homeostasis connected with attachments that we have to our sense of self. So let's say that you have an attachment to wanting a promotion at work because that will increase the valuation of your work life. That will increase, it will relieve some pressure of not being able to pay some bills comfortably. And in general, it will bump up your entire sense of self. That's the EP associated with how you see your work life. Then you create a perception that you're not going to get the promotion. But what is this perception but a thought? It isn't really an expectation as set by your subconscious brain. This is a thought pattern being played out by your brain that, if you're not careful, could become a habit. But it's only a perception. It's not reality. And so in that case, both sides of the equation of emotion are present, and in this case, of course, imbalanced. So a negative emotion will be the result of you secretly wanting the promotion, secretly being able to see your life becoming better, and your perception is different than your expectation or preference. Your perception is that you may not get it. If you didn't have the attachment to your job, you wouldn't care. If you didn't create the perception of, oh no, I'm not going to get it, there would be no negative worry emotion that was generated. And so, Paul, you actually have a completed equation of emotion, and as a negative proof, when your perception changes about what might occur when it doesn't come to pass, what happens? Well, the worry goes away because your perception of the pending negative event has gone away also. Make sense, Sean? Okay, so then I got this email this morning. Hi, thanks for replying so quickly. I must say, I didn't really understand what you were saying when I read it last night, although it nearly made sense. I went to bed thinking about it, having watched the podcast again. At about 5 o'clock this morning, I woke up and I understood. The reason I didn't get it in the first place was that I didn't see the expectation part of the equation in me. I never before realized what I have been carrying around with me, my expectations of how I thought other people should treat me and how they should act. Also, my expectations of myself, how I should act, how I should feel, and what I should be achieving. All this was brimming below the surface, waiting for some internal or external stimulus to complete the equation. This morning, I experienced what it feels like to put all that weight down. The weight of my expectations, I must say, it feels pretty good. I can't imagine how the idea didn't strike me before. It seems so obvious when you think about it. Thanks again, Paul. And I wrote back to Paul his potential next steps, but I think that's awesome. Because at the point that you can have a slight awakening to that thing that's been in your path that's been blocking you, oftentimes that can lead to an acceleration of understanding, an acceleration of awakening that goes well beyond just the next one step. You're like, okay, I've got that small thing out of my way, and then ba-boom, 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 dominoes start falling one after the other, after the other, after the other. Oh, I get this now. Oh, I get this spiritual master's writings now. Oh, I get that concept now. Oh, epiphany. And I just wanted to share that with you, that it's awesome that you guys can take benefit from these little podcasts that we put out. And I very much appreciate that. And I'm all about getting this information out to everybody who can possibly view it, because these are the kinds of things that we can do to take charge of our own pain and suffering and to move those things out of the way. And once we see that they are illusions, as Paul did this morning, then your life is an amazing adventure. You completely reduce the amount of expectations or preferences that you have, that you put on yourself, that you put on the world itself, and then when the world doesn't meet them, you don't have those negative emotional reactions that you have to deal with anymore. And what does that do for you? Well, that increases your level of understanding for the world, that increases your ability to react and to act within the world without having to deal with your own emotional bullshit first. And so, with other people that need compassion, with other people that need your empathy, with other situations that need your attention, now you're no longer dealing with your own crap before being able to address the situation or help whoever needs your assistance or serve others. And so how awesome is that? So I wanted to share that with you, that Paul had that awakening this morning from the Simple Equation of Emotion, episode 4 podcast, maybe with a little bump from my email itself. So I hope that this is serving you guys well. If you guys have similar stories, send them in. Sean at iamspirituality.com is my email. I would love you for every one of those. Okay, so next we're going to move into, I promised you last week, we're going to talk about the science, the peer-reviewed science, the published science of the benefits of mindfulness, meditation, emotional intelligence, etc. And if you are not up to speed on the health and psychological welfare implications of meditation and the physical changes that can occur in your body, then you need to probably drop by and take a peek at the incomplete website, emotionalintelligenceuniversity.com. And then under the benefits tab, you'll see a ton of benefits that have been scientifically measured and peer-reviewed, and on many cases confirmed over and over and over again through study after study after study, because the way science works is you have a major discovery and then you let other people go try and replicate it. And so these things have been replicated over numerous studies and numerous experiments. The personal benefits of mindfulness and attention training, you're not going to believe. They're friggin' amazing. First of all, let's talk about the most dramatic one that came out just recently, in the increasing of DNA telomeres. Now, this thing called telomerase helps grow these things called telomeres, and their telomeres are these extra proteins that are on the end of your DNA. And every time your cells replicate, your DNA gets replicated for that new cell. But every time, just like a Xerox machine, every time you make another copy, you make another copy, you make another copy, it gets a little fuzzier. It gets a little fuzzier. And when we're young, the DNA gets replicated in its complete form, and these telomeres on the end start to fray off. And as we grow older, the telomeres get shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter. They're meant to fall off so that they protect the DNA being replicated. Well, at the point that there are no more telomeres, the DNA starts to fray at the end every time it gets copied. And at that point that your DNA starts to fray, that's when we start getting horrible illnesses and we die off. Well, in meditators, DNA telomeres get longer. So this is a physical representation of a mindful practice, of a conscious practice that you can take and decide to participate in, that increases the length of your life. Because telomeres are directly proportional. They have direct correlation to your length of life. When you run out of telomeres, your DNA starts to fray and you die. And when the telomeres are longer, your cells replicate for a longer period, a longer lifetime. And you're healthy longer. And meditation increases the length of telomeres. So it increases the length of your life. So that's one reason that if you had no other reason to meditate in your entire life, would be good enough for you to sit down and start your meditating practice, or get back into your meditating practice, or sit down and really pound out saying, honey, I'm going to take 20 minutes a day where I need you to leave me alone. I need you to cover the kids. I need you to not talk to me and respect this time, or 30 minutes or an hour or whatever it is that is reason enough to make that decision and to make that life change. However, there are other benefits associated with meditation, mindfulness, including other studies that prove it increases your memory and the size and the gray matter of your hippocampus because it actually increases the gray matter in your hippocampus. Wouldn't meditation be an awesome treatment or a way to avoid or lower your risk of Alzheimer's disease? Wow. Other studies show you have a boosted immune system when you're meditating. Your psychological well-being increases. Your cognitive functioning increases. Your ability to think is increased after meditation. You have a better physical health, better emotional regulation. It increases your focus, your alertness, your enhanced sensory processing, enhanced body awareness. It lowers your muscle tension, so you want to get rid of the pain in your back like I did? Yeah, meditation can help you do that. Relaxation, lower blood pressure, lower breathing rate, increased positive emotions, emotional awareness, compassion, positive reappraisal, all positively influenced by meditation. So, why does this work? Well, meditation is basically attention control. And at the point that you're taking control of where your attention resides, you're no longer a slave of how your brain is working and how it wants to work. You're helping to control where your attention goes in your brain. And when you're controlling that, and when you're doing things that just like your muscles, when you're working your muscles at the gym and they get stronger, when you're working those specific sections of your brain, those specific sections of your brain get stronger. And the sections of your brain that you're not using get weaker, such as the negative emotion sections of your brain, such as the out of control, personal drama turmoil. All that kind of stuff gets down-regulated. And so meditation over time improves your life because it gives you the control to be able to control your attention and control where you put your attention. But then it also weakens the areas that have been causing you havoc previously when you're not paying attention to them. And that's proven science. And so that's called plasticity. Then your meditation controls your attention, controls your ability to put your attention into the awesome things into life. But then because you're down-regulating your negative stuff, over time, it becomes easier and almost automatic to down-regulate your negative stuff. My personal practice now blows me away. You won't believe it when I tell you this. I do not have negative emotions beyond a few seconds. That's simply my life now. And I can theorize that it's a portion of the plasticity of my brain down-regulating negative emotion over this long length of time. I don't know that to be a fact, but I mean, science by deductive reasonings tells us that, the brain changes over time depending on how you use it. And I've been down-regulating negative emotions for quite some time now, and it's almost automatic at this point. It's like I immediately see if there's something that I don't like or something that has occurred to me that creates an emotional reaction in my brain, because it still works. The limbic system still works, still tries to fire up fear, it still tries to fire up anger, still tries to fire up sadness, it still tries to fire up these emotions. One of which I went through with you a few weeks ago when I went to San Francisco. I was like, well, who am I to be in this room with these amazing people? We talked about that a few episodes ago. That kind of stuff still occurs, but when it does, it automatically, almost immediately disappears. Because I see the process. I see the process of the expectation or preference in my brain being compared to a perception that I have in my brain. And so then I can change the perception immediately, or I can look at my expectation or preference and decide that that's not what I want to be attached to. Or I can simply take a step back while looking at the process. And because I'm taking that step back, as proven by the Matt Lieberman study in 2007 at UCLA, there's now a thick black curtain between me and the emotional reaction that's trying to be pushed forward by my limbic system. And where's my attention? Where's my anterior cingulate cortex focusing my attention? It's not on the emotion anymore. It's not on the signs that it's getting from the limbic system. It's not on those signals that it's coming in that it would need to process normally because they're being loud and obnoxious and whatever. Now it's focused on the process. Now it's focused on the actual process in my mind that created the emotion itself. And so what's happening in that moment? Well, the left prefrontal cortex is downregulating the negative emotion of the limbic system, and everything's cool. And my attention's on the process of the emotion rather than the emotion itself. And so meditation can help you get there. Meditation can help you get to that point because meditation physically changes the gray matter in your brain to help you do it. So check out Emotional Intelligence University for the full list of positives and negatives. There's a bunch of other cool stuff. There's a green side and a red side, and on some of the pages the blue side and a red side. And the green side or the blue side shows you the increases of all the good stuff that's happening, and the red side shows you the decreases of all the bad stuff, which double negative is going to be a positive because, for instance, meditation decreases your mind wandering and your distractions. And we know the statistics behind that is every 11 minutes in our current environment, we're faced with some kind of potential distraction in our work life or our regular life, where if we change our focus, it takes us 25 minutes to get back to whatever we were doing originally. So we could lose a lot of productivity in a day if we're having to deal with our mind wandering or distractions. Well, meditation decreases those things. It decreases chronic pain. It decreases depression. It decreases anxiety. It decreases cortisol levels, which is a stress hormone that tears apart your brain and creates memory loss. It decreases emotional interference. It decreases negative mood states, addiction and substance abuses, OCD, PTSD, social phobias, eating disorders, reduction in psoriasis, a physical ailment, impulsive aggression, anger issues, cancers, bipolar disorders, all positively affected, all decreased through meditation. So go check it out, emotionalintelligenceuniversity.com, and you can check out, even though the webpage is incomplete, you can check out those cool things there. And lastly, for you business folks, man, do I have some awesome stuff for you. Because in the world of business, emotional intelligence and mindfulness has been proven in a work environment to increase benefits in business. So if you're an entrepreneur, if you're an executive, if you're a worker at a company, you can go up the ladder faster in your company by having higher levels of emotional intelligence and practicing mindfulness. Egon Zehnder analyzed 515 of their executives for emotional intelligence versus IQ and relevant previous experience. So they took their workforce and they said, okay, we're gonna review these folks for the people that have high emotional intelligence, which is what you're getting here in this podcast. So we're gonna analyze these people for high emotional intelligence versus these other people who don't have high emotional intelligence but have high IQ and relevant previous experience for their job position. And it turns out that the execs that were rated as successful for that company, 74% of them were high in emotional intelligence, and only 26% were high in IQ and relevant experience. So the folks who were really smart and had the experience to do the job were only 26% of the successful executives. 74% of the successful executives were the folks who maybe weren't as smart, but were high in emotional intelligence. A manufacturing plant took two groups of folks that they had balanced. Basically, they said, okay, same income level, same marital status, same ages, same everything, socioeconomic. And so they trained one group in emotional intelligence. And then a year later started measuring the benefits of the group versus group. So they had a control group and they had an emotional intelligence trained group. The emotional intelligence trained group were reduced their lost time accidents by 50% in this manufacturing plant. So having accidents that take people off the position and take people out of their job and lose time in a manufacturing plant because they have to replace somebody or they have to shut down a line or whatever, 50% reduction in lost time accidents from the meditation group. In addition, they reduced their formal grievances of employee problems with employees down 80%. So people started to be able to resolve their differences and see each other's turmoil and others' challenges outside of their own realm, outside of their own existence. And that reduced the formal grievances 80%, which saves HR a bunch of time and also reduces lawsuits. Lastly, productivity was up 17% in the group of meditators versus these folks. So how about that? L'Oreal started hiring sales representatives based on EI, and their sales rep performance went through the roof. In addition, their turnover rate went down quite a bit. And we know from other studies that turnover intention can be reduced by up to 94%. You want to know one of the biggest values in an organization is reducing their turnover. Because when you pay a salary, and I'm speaking as a previous executive, when you pay a salary to an individual, you actually pay about 150% of their salary because you have their salary, plus you have all their benefits, their communications plan, their phone, their desk, their whatever that you're paying for. Then if you lose them, you lose another year of their salary recruiting someone else. And then they have that new person has a 6-month ramp up. So when you lose somebody, it costs you a ton of money. And so reducing turnover is huge. And with emotionally intelligent folks or folks who have been trained in emotional intelligence and mindfulness, average turnover intention goes down around 83%. The high mark it goes down 94%, or it has in some organizations. How much money do you think that's saving that company? Large beverage company, a very large beverage company, hired executives based on emotional intelligence. Their 2-year performance for their 2-year turnover for low performance on their regular folks was 50%. On the emotionally intelligent folks, it went down to 6%. They lost only 6% of their new hires for division presidents. And these are, high-level executive folks in charge of thousands of people under them. Performance goals versus targeted goals. The regular executives that they didn't hire for emotional intelligence were 19% under their goal. The folks that they hired for emotional intelligence were 18% over their goals. And they rated the top 1/3 versus bottom 2/3 performers of division presidents in their organization. 87% of the emotional intelligent folks were in the top 1/3, and only 13% were in the lower 2/3 of performers. And so where do you think that major beverage company wants to put all their eggs? They go on to put all their eggs in the emotional intelligence basket. Are you guys learning emotional intelligence here? Yes, you are. Start utilizing it in business. National insurance firm, the Air Force, American Express, all have stories here on the webpage you can read about. And then at the very bottom of that page are the work benefits for higher emotional intelligence, which include enhanced employer-employee relations, employee productivity, attention at work, increased job satisfaction, increased cognitive functioning, increased employee self-efficacy, higher merit pay increases, more money for you, higher company rank, more power and more money for you because you're emotionally intelligent. Managerial performance went up, peer supervisor ratings went up. People liked the emotionally intelligent folks more. Stress-related tolerance went way up. Increased leadership scoring went up, which of course is correlated with all the promotions and raises associated with that. Worker benefits of higher emotional intelligence, the reductions, 70% reduction in absenteeism over 3 years. So the people who were calling in sick, no longer calling in sick, showing up for work. Is that because they're healthier or they feel more satisfied about their job? Maybe both. Up to 94% reduction in turnover, lower burnout, lower stress response, fewer aggression issues, fewer safety-related violations, and fewer on-the-job accidents, just because people got engaged and got trained in emotional intelligence and mindfulness. So if you guys have been on the fence about not meditating or about not increasing your emotional intelligence, which I know you're listening to this podcast, so you're increasing your emotional intelligence, come down off the fence and start meditating again, or increase your practice if you're practicing. Add another 10 minutes onto your practice each day. We will be offering some classes here in emotional intelligence that will be more comprehensive than all the stuff that we put here in the podcast, and we'll be offering those this summer. So stay tuned for those. Make sure that you're on the email list at iamspirituality.com, or you can go, and we just put up a new email list at emotionalintelligenceuniversity.com. So go check those out and sign up for those if you're interested. Hope things are well for you guys next week. I have no idea what we're going to talk about, but I'll make sure it's going to be cool. Love you guys. Talk to you soon. Peace.